Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 2nd of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. There was a dramatic arrest on Highway 2 today in efforts to stop an impending terror attack. Security services took a Palestinian man into custody near the Netanya interchange. Acting on intelligence information, police set up checkpoints in the area and blocked the highway in both directions. The detainee was found to have entered the country illegally and is suspected of being en route to carrying out a terror attack when he was captured. And in another incident, IDF troops arrested a resident of East Jerusalem on charges of involvement in the stabbing of 2 border police officers at the Lion Gate entry into Jerusalem's Old City last Friday. The Army announced the capture of Mohammed al-Ajuni during an overnight raid on a home in Ramallah, where he allegedly sought refuge since the knifing. 2 IDF soldiers were lightly wounded during the arrest operation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling for the International Criminal Court to reject the appeal from Palestinian Authority for membership because it is not a country, but rather an entity allied with a terrorist organization. Netanyahu made the comments at the end of an interministerial meeting that he convened in Tel Aviv last night to discuss ways to combat the signing of the Rome Statute by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, as well as his stated claims of intending to file charges of war crimes against senior Israeli military and political figures. Netanyahu vowed to do anything necessary to defend any IDF soldiers who might be indicted on such allegations. The participants at the meeting discussed ways to respond to the latest Palestinian maneuvers, although no operative decisions were announced. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman was not invited to the meeting, reflecting the current tensions between him and the premier during the election campaign. And meanwhile, French Ambassador to Israel Patrick Maisonneuve said today that Paris backed the UN Security Council resolution aiming to establish a timetable for the full Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank and East Jerusalem as a means to encourage the resumption of peace negotiations. He discussed the issue during a meeting at the Foreign Ministry with Deputy Director for Western Europe Aviv Shiron, who expressed Israel's deep disappointment with the French vote and emphasized that the only way forward is through negotiations and not unilateral steps. Meanwhile, according to Netanyahu's senior advisor, Dori Gold, Abbas' action will expose the Palestinians themselves to prosecution.
The Palestinian Authority, which forged a pact with Hamas that should be worried about the International Criminal Court, it engaged in war crimes against Israel by firing rockets deliberately aimed at Israeli towns and villages this summer. Israel will do what is necessary to defend its soldiers from this legal offensive being planned by Mr. Abbas.
The results from the Likud primary are now final, and the party's Knesset list is set for the March 17th elections. Following 18 hours of hand-counting votes cast by faction members on Wednesday, it has been announced that Interior Minister Gilad Erdan and Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein took the top spots behind Prime Minister Netanyahu. The majority of the Prime Minister's favored candidates placed high enough to likely secure Knesset seats, while most of those who lacked his support fared poorly. 16-year Knesset veteran and current Minister of Transportation Israel Katz came in fourth, followed by Miri Regev, Energy Minister Silvan Shalom, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon, Deputy Foreign Minister Zev Elkin, Tzachi Hanegbi, and Danny Danon. Former Kadima Minister Avi Dichter surprisingly scored a realistic slot by coming in 20th. On the part of the slate with an unrealistic chance for winning a Knesset seat are the 2 most disappointed candidates of the primaries, Deputy Transportation Minister Tzipi Hotovely and Jewish leadership faction leader Knesset member Moshe Feiglin. Critics point out that just 2 female candidates made it into the top 20 and that the list is low on Orthodox candidates as well as those favored by the settlement community, which could make Likud vulnerable to Naftali Bennett's Abait Yehudi party. Yesh Atid leader MK Yair Lapid launched a scathing attack against his former partners in the outgoing coalition last night, while demanding that they give us back our country. Speaking at a party convention in Tel Aviv, Lapid alleged that corruption goes far beyond the current scandal involving members of the Israel Beitenu party, and that it amounts to more than just the suspicions that Faina Kirschenbaum and the local council heads from Likud and Israel Beitenu allegedly took funds earmarked for Israeli citizens, saying that corruption is a violation of the most basic contract between the state and its citizens. The former finance minister blasted Labour Party leader Isaac Herzog for alleged involvement in past scandals. And then he went on to say that corruption also includes the prime minister's transfer of furniture from his official residence to his private villa in Caesarea, requests that the public pay for a private plane and the water in his private pool, as well as the ordering of pistachio ice cream to his house at public expense. Lapid also charged that Beit Yehudi party with caring only about its own institutions, seminaries, and settlements, but not what is good for the nation as a whole. Lapid went on to urge party head Bennett to remove construction and housing minister Uri Ariel from Beit Yehudi based on allegations that he sold public housing without a tender to religious council members. And Shas Chairman Aryeh Deri spoke with his supporters for the first time since resigning from the Knesset earlier this week, telling them that he has heard their calls for his return. He also vowed not to forget his promise to the party's late spiritual leader, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, in the hospital before his death, to continue caring for his sons and the impoverished. The latest developments follow Deri's notifying the faction's Council of Torah sages of his intent to leave politics after a video was leaked in which Yosef denounced him in favor of his rival, former party chairman Eli Yishai, who recently left Shas to start his own competing faction. Turning to the United States, where former governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, passed away at the age of 82 of natural causes, just hours after his eldest son Andrew was sworn in for a second term in the post held by his father for 11 years. Cuomo was hospitalized in November for a heart condition. The son of Italian-American parents was raised in the Queens neighborhood of South Jamaica in a middle-class and ethnically diverse neighborhood where the young Mario served as a Shabbos goy for members of the nearby Orthodox synagogue by performing tasks that are forbidden for Jews to carry out on the Sabbath. Cuomo was known for being a strong supporter of Israel and visited the Jewish state during his first term as governor in 1982. Last summer, during a solidarity mission to the country by Governor Andrew Cuomo, Prime Minister Netanyahu told him how clearly he remembered the firm and strong stance taken by his father with the State of Israel at the time when Netanyahu served as ambassador to the United Nations. Joining me now here in the studio to discuss the latest political and diplomatic events is senior correspondent for Bloomberg Israel, Kalev Ben-David. Hi, Kalev. Thanks for coming in this evening.
Pleasure to be back, Aaron.
All right, let's start with this week's rejection at the United Nations Security Council for the Palestinians' bid for statehood recognition. Do you view this as a victory for Israel, or should the government be really concerned about just how close that vote came in?
Well, the answer is both. Certainly in the short term, it was a victory for Israel. There was a lot of concern about this vote. Remember, even the months, there was even concern the United States might have ended up backing him, and that didn't happen. President Obama, of course, the United States rejecting the vote, rejecting the Palestinian proposal together with Australia. So, and there were some other good developments, especially the support of two African countries, Nigeria and Rwanda. I mean, traditionally, Africa has been a very strong supporter of the Palestinians, and this was certainly a welcome development for Israel. However, the vote was close, and the fact is the tide of time is turning against Israel in the United Nations. It's had a lot of these near misses in recent years, including the statehood vote in the Permanent Security Council, and eventually the Palestinians are going to be able to, especially if we do not see any progress at all on the peace process, there's going to be growing impatience in the international community, and the Palestinians will start winning some of these votes they've been losing at the United Nations. That has to be a source of concern for Israel.
I certainly see your point, and yet, do you agree with what Dory Gold had to say in our earlier report, that by pursuing membership at other UN agencies, such as the ICC, that these pursuits may be somewhat of a double-edged sword for the Palestinians?
What's interesting about the International Criminal Court, I spoke this week with a number of experts on the court, and they point out that the court sets the bar very high, meaning it really only has prosecuted clear cases against either government leaders or military figures, which there's clear evidence of really the genocidal activities or ordering outright killing of civilians. And it's going to be very hard for either Israel or the Palestinians to really get this court, which is not connected with the United Nations, by the way. It's separate from the United Nations, so it's less politicized, in order to get them to actually press charges against anyone on either side. That being said, yes, the Palestinians will try and bring their charge, will certainly make requests for charges. Israel, in response, will also make requests for charges against the Palestinians and against Hamas figures. That's the double-edged sword Dory is talking about. However, probably the Palestinians will gain more publicity or PR bonus out of this, because we know that's how it happens in the world. And that is going to be another, obviously, source and Hasbara challenge, as it were, for Israel.
Yeah, one would expect. All right, now let's talk about the election campaign. Of course, the Likud party primaries are over. They're behind us. What do you make of this list? Do they have what it takes to win the election?
Well, certainly the Prime Minister believes that happened. And if you look at the list, a lot of the concerns that were raised in recent weeks that people who are considered on the far right of the Likud, people like Danny Danon and Moshe Feiglin, would be moving up the list, and people who are considered within the Likud framework more moderate and maybe more attractive to the general public would be pushed down or forced off the list. And that didn't happen. In fact, of course, Feiglin himself it seems like he's out of the Knesset. That was someone definitely even the Prime Minister thought too extreme, and other figures that are allies of the Prime Minister. And he says that people who may appeal more to the general public, Avi Dichter and Tzachi Hanegbi, were able to get realistic places on the list. So obviously this is a list certainly the Prime Minister feels comfortable going into the general election with.
All right, let's talk just for a moment about Miri Regev, and this was somewhat of a surprise. She's probably the most notable exception in an MK who didn't particularly enjoy support from the Prime Minister. Does this indicate some source of friction within the Likud party?
I think there is, yes, because I think Miri Regev, she represented, of course, the wing of the party that's a little uncomfortable with the Prime Minister's economic policies. She was, of course, very populist, took very populist stances during her time, and that was an irritation for Prime Minister Netanyahu, who believes more in the free market. And I think that was his one disappointment with this list. She got that fourth slot, that top slot for women, and people that probably he might have wanted to see someone like Tzipi Hotovely fell to a non-realistic spot. So I think that was the one disappointment for him.
Okay, you can put on your thinking cap and come up with a prediction for us. Are we going to be surprised by the two selections from Netanyahu about the two spots that are reserved for his own choice?
That's possible. One name that's been bandied about is former General Yoav Gallant, who Netanyahu had wanted to appoint as the Chief of Staff 4 years ago, of course opposed by Ehud Barak and Gabi Ashkenazi, the then sitting Chief of Staff. And I think that disappointment for Netanyahu, it's been stinging him, and he wanted to bring Yoav Gallant, do right by him. So his name has been come up for the other. I think that 11th spot. The other spot, I would be very surprised if it's not going to be a woman. You heard you just said on the broadcast, only two women in the top 20. That doesn't look good for the Likud. It could bring a woman from outside, maybe a religious woman, for example. We talked about the lack of religious. Another possibility, Tzipi Hotovely, who we mentioned, he could bump her up from the position she is, I think, 25 or 6, and put her up in the top 20 so that she has a chance. So I would be surprised if it's not a woman. Plenty of women out there he could choose from.
Great estimation there. I like that. All right, now a number of other parties have added some very significantly and well-known figures to their party lists. So who amongst these other parties do you think it was a significant choice?
Well, the two most prominent I could think of, Manuel Trachtenberg, that was the Labour Party. He was the economist that, of course, led the committee after the protest over cost of living and apartment housing that we had in Tel Aviv a few years ago. And, of course, he came up with a whole bunch of recommendations to try to lower the cost of living for Israelis. That was very popular, his committee, and I think that's Labour really trying to make it clear that besides the, of course, peace and security issue, they're going to try to really go after Likud and Netanyahu on the economic issue, on cost of living issues. The other one is, of course, another journalist like yourself, an anchor, Inon Magal, who was a broadcaster right here, of course, at Channel 1, going to Bayit Yehudi, the Jewish Home Party. What's significant, of course, is, as far as I know, he's not a orthodox, or at least known as being religiously observant, and he's coming from this so-called secular media. Again, interesting choice, Naftali Bennett trying to broaden the base of the Jewish Home Party beyond its orthodox base, especially national religious base. So interesting, and we'll see. He already had Ayelet Shaked in the party trying to do that. It's interesting how much that effect if he can get those votes.
Okay, we have time for one last quick question, and that is, what is going on and what's going to happen with the Shas party? Do these latest developments mark the end of the party, or are they going to recover?
Okay. End of the party? No. There's still always going to be a community of a Sephardic Orthodox community that's going to want their representation in the Knesset. But the thing is, in previous years, Shas was able to go beyond that and to get people, for example, many Sephardic or Mizrahi Jews, as we call here, who may not have been that religious, but it was a source of ethnic pride. And I think that part of the population may be turned off by what's happening, the split and this arguing over the legacy of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. Latest polls show them going as low as 7 seats or even 6 or 5, and that may be where the party is going to go from here on in. It's still going to be a presence in Israeli politics, but it probably won't be that kingmaker status that it had in the past, when it could really be the deciding weight in deciding who, after election, who forms the government.
Interesting. Always good to have you with us, Kalev. Thanks for coming in, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom, Aaron, to you and all the viewers.
Returning now to the Likud primaries, and one of the candidates was Temple Mount activist Yehuda Glick, who failed to secure a realistic slot reserved for a representative from Judea and Samaria. IBA's Eli Wogelenter spoke with Glick outside of the Likud polling station at the Jerusalem Convention Center, where he asked Glick about his recovery from being shot at point-blank range during an assassination attempt by a Palestinian terrorist on October 29th.
Thank God. I have the most wonderful wife in the world. I had the most wonderful medical treatment, and I am getting better every day. People are praying for me. So much love around the world, and it really is great.
You have a cast on your arm, I see.
The cast on my arm is going off tomorrow. And here's the Gila Gamliel. Good luck. Hatzlacha. The cast is coming off tomorrow, and I'm getting better every single day.
What else is achievement?
My blood tests are getting better every single day. I left the hospital. My hemoglobin was 7. It's supposed to be 13. Yesterday, I was checked. I have 11. So I'm Baruch Hashem. I'm standing on my feet. I walked yesterday for the first time 400 meters. So I'm doing much better. And it's a lot thanks to the love and the prayers and the beautiful family I have. And such a happy day here. The Likud, which represents all of the nation, ultra-Orthodox, modern Orthodox, Chiloni, secular, Christians, Muslims, Druze, the people of Israel. So beautiful. And everybody here, even people who are competing with each other, are all so much respect between one another. It's so great to see it.
Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
How old were you?
There are worse things in the world.
How old were you when you moved here?
8.5.
Another terror victim is also showing signs of improvement after suffering critical burns in a Samaria firebomb attack with her father last week. 11-year-old Ayala Shapira has regained consciousness. Physicians at the Sheba Medical Center at Tel HaShomer say that she remains in serious but stable condition, and she has awakened, recognized her relatives, and has spoken with them. The attack occurred on a road near the Ma'ale Shomron settlement. The alleged terrorists who threw the Molotov cocktail at the Shapira car have been arrested and confessed to perpetrating the attack that also left Ayala's father, Avner, with light injuries. Several suspects have been detained in connection with the murder of a singer during a birthday party at a club south of Rishon LeZion last night. Roman Simchayev was shot to death following the breaking out of an argument between the victim and several partygoers. Simchayev's brother is in moderate condition after also being shot after reportedly coming to the club to help him. In other regional news, U.S.-led coalition warplanes carried out more than a dozen overnight airstrikes in and around Islamic State forces' de facto capital in northeastern Syria. Raids on the outskirts of Raqqa were the heaviest on the city along the Euphrates River since the radical Sunni group captured a Jordanian pilot after the downing of the coalition's F-16 fighter jet in the area on December 24th. 130 Orthodox rabbis and community leaders from 42 nations were in Jerusalem this week as part of the annual conference of the World Zionist Organization. The theme of this year's gathering was the unity of the Jewish people in times of crisis, with discussion focused on seeking creative solutions to the challenges facing the participants' many diverse communities.
I believe the biggest significance is actually coming together. The fact that rabbis from all around the world share their ideas and share their problems and are able just to talk and to schmooze is so significant.
We are speaking about issues that engage and involve the Jewish nation and Jewish communities all around the world.
One of the greatest challenges, the challenge of assimilation, the challenges that we have of a lack of education, lack of knowledge, the challenges also of lack of affiliation, of identity, of requiring of a person understanding the need to be part of a community.
Most of the rabbis here, they have not network in their places because they are coming from almost small communities, and here they have the possibility to discuss, to change idea, to exchange suggestions.
I think there's a very high correlation between those who have a strong identity with the State of Israel to those who have a strong identity to the Jewish people as a whole. Unfortunately, if you lose either one of those, the other begins to suffer. And we're beginning to see the real challenges where people don't automatically connect anymore, and that's one of the things that rabbis have to make a difference with.
In local finance, the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading and due to the closure of the stock market. Here's a look at the closing numbers for the week. Turning to the weather, and get ready to bundle up. Later tonight we can expect rain showers in the north and along the coast with flurries of snow on Mount Hermon. Thunderstorms are likely to spread throughout the country down to the Negev tomorrow, accompanied by unseasonably cold temperatures, strong winds, and the possibility of flash floods. Here's the forecast to home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope to see you again tomorrow, and I'll be back to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.